Hello, everybody. Happy Wednesday. This is Michelle Benjamin from AUDIENCEX. I'm going to give everybody a second to join. Happy Webinar Wednesday, also Hump Day. Today's topic is Pixels 101. We're going to talk all about what pixels are, go over some pixel strategy. Hopefully we're not going to get too technical, but I feel like maybe we might get a little technical. But anyway, feel free to bring your questions. We will be addressing them all at the end. We are recording this, so if you miss something, we'll be sending out the recording to everyone. There are dogs present with us, and we are going to do our best to keep them quiet, dogs and children. But I'm sure you all understand, given the circumstances, that things might happen. So I think that's all the housekeeping. We are recording it. Please send your questions over via either the Q&A or the chat function, and we'll be keeping an eye on those. If we don't address them during the presentation, we will get to them at the end. And if anyone would like a copy of the slides afterwards, feel free to just email us and we can share those with you. Our presenter today is Emily Molloy. If you're not familiar with her, she is a Senior Client Solutions Manager at AUDIENCEX. She works on the strategy team. And she is our in-house pixels expert. And so with that, I will pass it over to Emily. Welcome, Emily.
Thanks so much, Michelle. I will admit that that dog in the background is mine. I will do the best that I can to keep him quiet, but unfortunately no promises can be made there. All right, jumping into our agenda for today. So as Michelle mentioned, we're really just going to cover the basics of what is a pixel, how that process works, what a parameterized pixel is, and the essentials to pixel strategy when you're thinking about campaign planning. And then of course, we'll save some time for Q&A at the end. So jumping right into things, the basics. What is a pixel anyways? So pixels are a piece of code that is placed within the website's code that allows the DSP to collect information about actions that are taken on that website. That's kind of technical jargon, but essentially what it means is this pixel allows the DSP to understand what's happening on the client's site so that we can segment our audiences, track conversions, and really understand more about that conversion lifecycle for your customers. The information that's included in that code is going to tell the DSP how it wants to categorize the audience or the person or the users that have taken the action that triggers the pixel. So for the first section that's highlighted in green, that will tell you which DSP the pixel is a part of. So for this one, for example, inside.ad server is the Trade Desk's pixel or the Trade Desk network. Then the little blue section will tell the Trade Desk this is the advertiser that you need to tie this pixel to so they know which client or campaign or group this user is attached to, and the pixel is the actual event that we're looking to track. So if that's a page view, a conversion, any kind of other event that we'll talk a little bit more about in the next couple of slides.
Hey, Emily, before we move on, one quick question. We should clarify a DSP, a demand side platform. Someone just wanted clarification on what that is.
Correct. Yeah, so a DSP is a demand side platform. That's where we run all of our programmatic campaigns. So anything display, native, CTV, OTT, etc. This would also be true if we were talking about Facebook or Google. Both of those platforms have their own pixels that function basically in the same way that these ones do, except instead of sending that information to a DSP, they send that information to Facebook or to Google. I think that clarifies things a bit, Michelle.
Yep, thank you.
All right, cool. All right. Moving on to the next piece. So what do we use these to track? So pixels are used to identify groups of users based on actions that they take on a website. That could really be anything as long as it's a unique event on the site. So it could be a site visit, just that they went to the website, a purchase, a different type of conversion. So like a lead form, viewing a specific landing page. If you have like a more information page, it's an important step in your funnel, or any kind of other action that you want to track to understand how people are interacting with your brand and with your website. So how does it work? The basic pixel process functions kind of like a string of dominoes. There's the trigger, which is the event that we're looking to track. So that page view, that button click, whatever we're looking to keep track of, which then triggers the pixel code. The pixel code triggers the network call, and the network call passes that information to the DSP. In that process, the trigger, again, is the event that you're looking to track. the pixel script is then triggered to send by the event we're looking to track to send the network call. And that network call is really like a digital phone call. So it's essentially the client's website picking up the phone, calling the trade desk and saying, hey, trade desk, just so you know, Susie looked at that landing page that we're looking to track. So add a cookie on her so that we can track her and keep that information tied to the campaign. If we had a parameterized conversion pixel, the site would also say, oh, by the way, Susie made a e-commerce purchase and her purchase was $29. And then the DSP says, okay, great. And it classifies all that information in its system, which allows us to retarget and to report on all of that activity. It looks like there's a couple questions. Michelle, do you think we should stop or should we keep on?
The other question we got is, can pixels be used outside of retargeting tactics?
Yes, so pixels are what we use to track conversion events too. So if you have a lead form that you're looking to track or a purchase, we would place a pixel and then the DSP reports on the number of conversions that take place that are tied to the campaign. So that's what the other main function of pixels. We can also use them to create lookalike audiences in certain platforms because that pixel essentially is just storing a group of people and information about them. All right, moving along to the next piece. So I mentioned that in that network call, we could include additional information if we wanted to, and that is done via adding a parameter to the pixel. And like I said, it's just basically that call saying, just so you know, yes, a purchase happened, and that purchase was for $29. She bought a blue sweater, and the order ID was ABCDEFG. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of different parameters that we could include, but the most common that we work with are tied to the e-commerce space and their revenue, order ID, product SKU, and quantity. Here's where we're getting a little bit technical, but I'm going to try and focus on the most simple parts of this based on the color coding. So this is another pixel, all of the blue part that you're seeing on the left, and that's essentially like the same pixel that we looked at a few slides ago. The parameter just adds these extra red and pink pieces, which are what passes that additional information back to the DSP with that network call. So in this instance, the parameter is from the red, is from the DSP. So in media, this is a media math pixel. In media math, we know that V1 media math will understand as revenue. So that's how they'll calculate return on ad spend. And then V2, we've decided to also track order ID. The pink part is actually a piece of code from the website. And the client site is what's going to tell us what that value is for that parameter. So if it was a $20 purchase, a $30 purchase, and what that transaction ID was. So then when the pixel is triggered, so when a purchase is made, the pixel script reruns and the macro fills in those values so that that network call, that phone call, hey, Susie made a purchase, can go to the DSP with all of the information that it needs. So in this instance, if in the bottom section, the information that DSP would receive when this conversion occurred is that a conversion occurred and it was for $20.99 and the transaction ID was that string. I'm going to pause because that's probably the most technical piece of information that we'll go through, and I did see a few things pop up. Michelle, should we jump on those now or wait till the end of Q&A?
We might as well address them now while we're in it. Does having a pixel risk slowing the load time of a client page? What about having multiple pixels?
So we can talk about this actually. The short answer is no. All of this happens in a nanosecond. So not really. I mean, if you had 37 pixels on a page, it might very, very, very limitedly slow your page down. But the pixel is only triggered when that event happens. So if you have 37 pixels on your website, they probably don't all load on the same page. They probably don't all load on the same action. So if you had 37 network calls happening at once, it might slow your page down half a second, maybe, probably not even. But the short answer is no, there's really not a lot of risk.
All right, thank you. That's all we got so far.
Okay, cool. All right. moving along. So the fundamentals of pixel strategy, this is the fun part. So basically, what can we use pixels to track, and where should I be placing them when I'm thinking about planning for a new campaign? This is not the most helpful answer, but it's the truth. The short answer is really everything. Anything that you think could tell you more about your consumer, about your conversion lifecycle, about your product relevance, about anything, it's always a best practice to track it. You don't have to use it, but once the pixel is placed, then that data is there. And that gives us the opportunity to dodge and weave and be strategic and try new things consistently throughout the campaign. Some essentials are key landing pages. So if you have a learn more page that is really crucial to your conversion lifecycle, you want to make sure you have a pixel on that landing page. I'd always recommend obviously having one on the home page. Upper funnel events, so things like view product, add to cart, different steps within your conversion process. So if you have a lead form, you might want to put a pixel on the start button of the lead form, and then also on the complete, so you're understanding not only how many final lead form submissions you're getting, but what kind of upper funnel interaction you're seeing from the campaign or from different tactics. So for example, in some of your prospecting tactics, you might see that you're not getting a ton of conversions because it's that first touch point for these users. But if you have these additional pixels placed, you might see, wow, well, my third party audience is getting like a 25% add to cart rate, which is crazy, crazy high. So that prospecting audience, even though it's not delivering purchases, is creating really strong upper funnel awareness to then feed into those retargeting groups and to bring them into the funnel and continue to engage them. And without that pixel placed further up the funnel, we wouldn't know that. So having that information is really helpful for us when we're thinking about how to optimize at all stages of the conversion life cycle. So where do you start? And essentially, you want to place a pixel on every milestone within your conversion process, or anything that you think could tell you something different about your audience. So if you are an e-commerce retailer and you have a men's section and a women's section, you might want to pixel the men's section and the women's section separately so that okay, well, these people would be more motivated by ads of male clothing, and these people would be more motivated by ads with female clothing, because we know that they've visited either that men's or women's page. So if you're not sure where to start, really just start with that ultimate goal of your campaign. If it's e-commerce purchases, if it's lead form submissions, whatever that looks like, and work your way backwards. So what steps did they need to take in order to get all the way there to that final conversion action that you were looking to push them to? And if you're still unsure where to start, start with the data that you do have. Look in Google Analytics, look in your CRM system, see which landing pages have the highest conversion rate, see what that behavior flow looks like in analytics. That can give you a little bit of a better place to start if you're not sure. And then of course, any goals you have configured in analytics should also be mirrored with pixels, so that we're giving the campaign the same information that you're looking at daily when you're assessing your brand and your site's functionality. So jumping into an example, I did this with Madewell. Madewell obviously is a very large e-commerce retailer, and I was like, all right, well, if I was running a campaign for them, what are the fundamentals absolutely I would want to track for them? Obviously, they get a ton of traffic, so they're not going to run into any kinds of issues of any of these events only having 2 or 3 pixel fires. So if you're a little bit smaller, you don't want to go crazy overboard and track events that you only see 1 or 2 interactions with in a month. But as soon as you're getting closer to relevance, like 100, 500, 1,000 plus, those might be key events that you're looking to track. So in this case, their conversion life cycle is really a site visit, which we would add a landing page, or a landing page pixel to the home page. They viewed key pages, so they viewed those content categories of denim, clothing, shoes, accessories, dresses, etc. Viewed product, so they viewed the actual sweater, add to cart, view cart, initiate checkout, payment, and complete purchase. So we're going to run through all of those steps, and I'll just mention what those triggers are so you can kind of start to visualize where exactly we would be benchmarking this campaign. So and then to my previous point, that you would also want to add pixels for audience segmentation. So these aren't necessarily tracking steps in your conversion lifecycle, but they're going to help you understand how you might want to group your audience and what kind of custom messaging you might want to serve them. So things like email signups or key landing pages. So the first step in that conversion lifecycle that I mentioned before. They're going to view a key landing page. In this case, this is viewing the denim landing page, and that trigger would just be any time that this URL is loaded on a browser. That means that the user completed this action. The next step would be an add to cart. So anytime someone clicks this gray add to cart button or add to bag button in the bottom right-hand corner, we know they're interested. They've shown additional intent. They're moving further down the funnel. Then they've viewed their cart. So in addition to adding things to cart willy-nilly, like we all do from Instagram ads all the time, they've actually viewed the cart. They're looking at the total price. They're thinking, okay, like do I really want to do this? And that would be triggered by the cart page view, the checkout button click. So this is then they're like, okay, I'm in. I'm starting the whole process, but there is probably some degree of drop off between users who complete this action, users who purchase, and understanding that drop off would be really helpful. This would also be a great retargeting audience because they got almost all the way there and then might have abandoned. So that's a great audience to make sure that you're tracking, especially if it's a decent size. So in this case, the trigger would be the click on the checkout button click in the bottom right-hand corner. Then the next page, right, that is the very end page. This is where users will add their payment information. So this would be triggered on this URL load. So the URL where it includes the demand store, which is this final section. And then the last would obviously be that order confirmation page that gives you your transaction ID and tells you that your order will be on the way in the next couple days. I unfortunately did not want to spend $118 on a dress for this webinar, but I think you guys can all think about what a conversion page looked like, and then that would obviously be triggered on that page load of the confirmation page. That's really pretty much it for the event. If you're trying to figure out where exactly you want to benchmark your pixels, I would just go through the process and think about, okay, like which one of these are really events that will tell me something about how interested this user is in my goods and services. And our key takeaways for today. So really these are the 5 kind of key bullet points for today, but pixels allow advertisers to track key events on their website and segment their audience based on the actions that audience takes on their website. That is the most simple that I could make it, but unfortunately it's still a little bit wordy. The process for a pixel firing functions like a chain of dominoes, that when an event occurs, triggers a series of events that passes details on that event back to the DSP, or to our earlier question, to AdWords, Facebook, etc. Aim to pixel as many milestone events in the customer journey as possible. If you're ever unsure of whether or not you should pixel it, I would definitely vote place a pixel. And then place pixels on pages and events that signify differences in customers in order to segment these audiences and customize messaging. This will allow you, again, to really reach your audience in a more impactful way. And then last but not least, the sooner the pixels can be placed, the better. The more data, the merrier. That's probably my catchphrase. But as soon as you start thinking about planning for a new campaign, trying to get those pixels placed as soon as possible is always recommended, even in those early pre-sale phases, because the more data that you can gather prior to a campaign launching, the more information that the DSP has on the way that users are interacting with your site, the more that they know about who those users are, and the larger retargeting and first-party data pools that we'll have to use to jump the campaign off to success. And I think that's really it for me, and then we'll move into Q&A. I think I saw a couple other pop-ups, so Michelle, I'll let you, I'll hand the mic back to you.
All right, thank you so much. We do have quite a few questions, so keep them coming and we will clarify everything. First of all, how many actions can you track in one pixel?
In one pixel, one action. So you would place a separate pixel on any individual action that you were looking to track. The one exception to this is a Facebook pixel, because in Facebook you have a universal pixel, and then you separately place, they're kind of like little pixel offshoot branches that communicate with the main pixel for each of those events, which is kind of complicated. But the short answer is one pixel for one event.
Okay, so in the Madewell example, every screen that you were showing would have its own pixel?
Correct.
Okay. Alrighty. What about burn pixels?
Can you clarify burn pixels?
I'm not familiar with what a burn pixel is. I was wondering if you knew.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with what that is either.
Okay, we will get back to you on that answer. Alrighty. Are there pixel strategies outside of web-based uses? Meaning, can pixels be used in other media outside of the web? There was another question previously about how well pixels work on mobile in-app versus mobile web or desktop. So what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I mean, pixels are based in the browser. So you can't track anything that happens offline. So for example, if you were trying to track a phone call, you could track the button click of the phone number that's on the website, but you couldn't track if someone decided to then pick up their phone and type in the number manually, because that's not there's no code trigger that would tell the pixel that that event happened. For mobile app, you can place pixels on mobile apps. The difference is you typically need what's called an SDK, a software developer kit, and then the pixels are placed within that. It's kind of like a tag management system. So you can still use them, they're just placed differently.
Okay, cool. Speaking of tag management, another question we got, how do pixels from various media partners such as a DSP relate to Google Tag Manager?
Yeah, so Google Tag Manager is kind of like a bucket. Google Tag Manager, Telium, there's a bunch of other ones, but it's one piece of code that you place across the entire site in the universal header or manually on every single page of the website that you're looking to pixel. And then you're able to keep all of the pixels together in the container. So it's a lot less work for the developers, because if you're going to ask them to place 75 pixels individually across your site, they might be very upset with you. But if you ask them to put it in a tag management solution, they place it one time, and then there's logic built into Google Tag Manager and into Telium that allows you to set those triggers that we talked about. So for example, in Google Tag Manager, if you wanted to set a pixel to fire on the home page of Madewell, you would set the trigger to URL equals homepage, and then it would trigger. And it essentially gives you more, once you've configured that pixel once, then you could use the same logic for other pixels. So if you were placing DSP pixels and Facebook and AdWords, but you're tracking all the same events, you could place those all together. And it's just easier than placing it on the site. In that domino chain, it's essentially just like there's an extra domino that's in the middle of it. And instead of the website directly telling the pixel to send that network call, it's Google Tag Manager that says, okay, yep, the logic that you've set in the platform has been met. This happened, so send your network call.
All right, cool, thank you. Yes, I know Emily's a big fan of container tags, so we could talk.
Huge fan of container tags, I love it.
It always seems to simplify things for advertisers who have a lot to manage anyway, especially when you have to involve your development team. So
yeah. And on our side too, if you're working with clients, I don't know how many people are brand director agencies that are on the line, but from an agency perspective, we can go back and forth with clients for weeks trying to place pixels correctly. But if they just place a container tag and give us access to it, or if they place one of ours, then we're able to see everything that's happening and troubleshoot more effectively and work with them. And it takes a little bit of a headache off of the client. It's more like a one-stop solution. And then we're always very sure of where every pixel's placed. There's less risk of pixels falling off when they make creative updates to the site or things like that.
All right. Okay, next question. When would you recommend tagging a page load versus a button click?
Well, it depends on what the event is. So if you're looking to track, say, that add to cart action, I would recommend tracking the button click rather than the page load of the page that the add to cart leads to, if that makes sense, because there might be some degree of drop off in people that are adding to cart versus people that are actually like being redirected to that next page. So you want to track the event that is closest to the action that you're looking to understand. A button click and a page view too, they're just different actions, right? So a button click will typically lead to a redirect, but there's time that happens in between there. So you're getting a more accurate understanding of the number of events that have occurred if you're tracking the button click. But if there isn't a button click, a page view is fine.
Alrighty. Not sure if there's a clear answer to this, but I'll let you handle it. I might just say there's not an answer. How many pixels would you typically recommend to an e-commerce client? 5 to 10? Question mark.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that process that I outlined, those are all of like the typical standard events. I think there were 6 or 7 or 8 of them. So probably at least those, but then depending on the size of your site, I mean, if you're seeing 100 transactions a month, you don't need to place 35 pixels. You don't have that much product differentiation in what's happening on your site to really glean a lot of information from that. But if you're a huge e-commerce like Amazon, I mean, it would make sense to have pixels placed on all of those key headers, but then it can spiral very quickly, right? So yeah, 5 to 10 is probably your best option, but I would say definitely rule of thumb, like any of those key milestones, any action that the user has to take to purchase something, that definitely should be pixeled.
All right, one last question, and then I think we might be wrapping it up, although they seem to keep trickling in. So outside of Google Analytics, can you set up a pixel to track time on site?
There are certain pixels, I believe, that specifically with container tags, you're able to do this in GTM and in Telium. I believe you can set up certain types of logic that has the pixel fire on a time delay. I actually personally have never configured that logic, but I am quite certain that that is something you can do. You might need quite a skilled developer to get it implemented, though.
All righty. Let's see. I think you mentioned that you could create lookalike audiences based on the data gathered through pixels. What is the process for that?
Yeah, so it depends on which platform you're in. If we're talking about Facebook, you actually would just do it within Facebook. So you're able to, from any pixel event in Facebook, create a lookalike off of that event. For the DSPs, it depends on which DSP it is. So in some instances, we would have to reach out to a data onboarding partner and they would onboard those segments that would create the lookalike. In other instances, you're able to do it within the platform directly. It just depends on the nuances of that specific platform. But the basics are you either within the platform or outside of the platform have this audience that's based on the pixel, and that the system, either the DSP or the additional partner, uses the information about that audience. So this is a really ridiculous example, but if, for example, every purchaser that purchased your Madewell t-shirts online also really loves chocolate milk, there's no way that we as humans could ever figure that out. But the DSP could from the cookie data for those users. So that would then allow them to say, okay, well, we know that the users that purchase this product like chocolate milk, so let's find people that also like chocolate milk. And we also know that they really like the color green, so people that like chocolate milk and the color green. And they'll use various systems of logic to project out who is the most likely to be interested in your product based on your previous purchasers or based on your previous ad carts or whatever that audience is that you've given it as the seed audience.
Yep, it's all about the AI. They know things about you that you don't know.
All about that data.
All right, those are all the questions we have for today. If we missed a question, please feel free to reply. We're going to send out a recording of this presentation to everybody who registered. If we missed your question or you have additional questions, feel free to just reply to that email. You can also send an email to hello@AUDIENCEX. That comes to me and the marketing team. We will manage it for you, make sure that we get your questions answered. Emily is part of the strategy team here, and they live and breathe campaigns and pixels and strategies to make sure that you're reaching your people. So if you have any more questions, I'm happy to connect you with them. Emily, thank you so much. This was amazing. We had so many questions. I hope you answered them all. I feel like we did, but thank you for everything.
Of course. I apologize for my dog's poor behavior, but luckily he was mostly well behaved.
Yeah, no problem. It is totally understandable at this point. But all right, everybody, have a lovely Wednesday, and we will see you next time.
Awesome. Thanks, Michelle.